Hey, what is going on, guys? It's DK. Back at you with another video here for an early look breakdown of the Week 9 NFL main slate on Draftkings. Before I get into the video, if you guys are new to the channel, my name's DK. I make daily videos breaking out NBA, NFL, PGA, and esports data fantasy sports slates. Before we get into the video, I want to thank you guys again for all support. It is greatly appreciated on the videos, the live streams, as well as on Twitter. The easiest way to support me, since all the content is free, is leave a like button on the video, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you don't upload videos when I go live. Obviously, I will be live streaming for the main slate 1 hour before lock Sunday morning on my YouTube channel to go over everything. Also, if you guys cannot watch the videos, I do upload on Apple Podcasts. The link is in the description below, which is the DK DFS show. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's jump into the video. So before we talk about players and their prices for Week 9, let's quickly look back at my lineup from Week 8. So Week 8 was the week of the weather, right? The weather was a huge impact on a lot of these games, and it did not go well for me. So I had to rearrange my lineup. We went over this in the live stream, as in the early look videos. It's the final look, I was pretty high on Carr and Waller, but obviously pivoted off of them with the wind being so bad in that game. I went to Lamar Jackson at QB. He was a little bit disappointing. Turned it over a bunch. I think two picks and 2 fumbles. Yeah, so not great. We did get a little bit unlucky. He got tackled at the 1, and then had a touchdown run called back as well. So probably missed out on a good 10 or so points, maybe a little bit more. So it could have been a big day for Lamar, but I feel like we got a little bit unlucky there. It was just a price point thing for me with him there at 7.4K. Obviously, the matchup wasn't great. At running back, yeah, so my original build, I had Jamal Williams and Gio, getting off with rearranging some things. I got to Kareem Hunt. I knew it would be popular. Didn't really work out there. The matchup was good, and the fact that the wind was so bad there, I felt a little bit more comfortable. Obviously they were going to rely on the ground game a little bit more, but it was just a super ugly game. There was no point score in that one. Super slow, so... he was popular, but yeah, did not get there. Jamal Williams was perfectly fine, and Devontae Adams as well. I kind of hinted that I was going with a Minnesota Green Bay stack. Unfortunately, I did not get to Dalvin Cook. Now, I did. I know I talked to a good amount of you guys onto Cook in the live stream. I liked him as a pivot off of a chalky Henry. Unfortunately, my build, I went, what I was building for here was I was hoping Green Bay would get off to an early lead, and then Minnesota would have to kind of play catch up. Right, and unfortunately, it was Minnesota in the lead basically the entire time. Kirk Cousins only threw 11 times. So, yeah, Thielen and Irv Smith are obviously not going to get there for me when the quarterback throws 11, or he had 11 completions, 14 times. I think he was 11 to 14. So, it was a little bit unfortunate. That's how the game flowed. Yeah, A.J. Green, he was popular. He was the one receiver that didn't get there for Cincinnati. And the reason I liked him the most of the Cincy receivers was because just the price point. He's just the cheapest. He had back-to-back games of like double-digit targets. So Auden Tate actually had a really good game, as well as obviously Boyd and Higgins. So kind of got to dig into that a little bit more. I got to see if did the snaps go down on him a bit. I didn't get to watch a ton of that game outside of watching Red Zone. So that's something I have to look into a little bit more, see if that was a process mistake. But again, I know a good amount of people were on A.J. Green. Unfortunately, that was an L. One guy I didn't play that I told you guys to play in cash was Keenan Allen. That he was a clear play for cash games. In this lineup, though, again, I was a little getting contrarian because it's GPPs. And then Braxton Berrios, kind of mentioned I liked him over Mims as the value play. He was actually good. 8 catches, 34 yards, 11.4 fantasy points for 3.5 carries, perfectly fine. Browns defense, again, a little bit tilting. My original build I actually did have the Dolphins defense. I mentioned them a couple times, but with the wind and everything, I went to the Browns defense, hoping that would kind of affect the Raiders. Only got 3 points, so yeah. All in all, it was a very forgettable week for me. Hopefully, you guys had better weeks. I know some of you cashed because Dalvin Cook. If you had Cook, basically you cashed. But yeah, that's a look back at my lineup here for Week 8. And I just didn't have a good feeling going into it with it was like all the games I wanted to target had the really bad weather. So it was the weather week for sure. But yeah, L for me in Week 8. Let's see if we can bounce back for Week 9. So let's review some of the Vegas numbers for the games that we have out right now, and then we can get into the player-by-player breakdown. So Panthers Chiefs, it's a 52.5 over under. The Chiefs are currently 11-point favorites. Looking like we might get McCaffrey back for this one for the Panthers. Bears Titans is a 46.5 over under. The Titans are 5.5-point favorites. Broncos Falcons a 50 over under. The Falcons are 4-point favorites. Broncos had that insane comeback last week. And now they get a really good spot here against Atlanta. Lions and Vikings, this one should be another one that potential for a shootout, 53.5 over under. Vikings are 4-point favorites. Texans and Jags is a 51.5 over under. The Texans are 6.5-point favorites. We have Seahawks, we have Bills is a 54 over under. Another game that definitely has potential for a shootout. Seahawks are 2.5-point favorites, and Raiders Chargers 54 over under. Chargers are 1.5-point favorites. So we have a good amount of games that are definitely on the higher end as far as over under. So definitely some intriguing games. All right, let's start with quarterback today, and that's kind of weird. My lineup came preloaded with Kyler Murray. That's strange. No, all jokes aside though, Kyler is at 7.8K. The matchup is fair here against Miami. They actually played pretty well defensively. Obviously, we saw against the Rams. We're no longer getting him at a nice discount. 7.8K. You're going to have to pay a premium for him. I've told you guys in every single week he's been on the main slate. I've played him. I think he's more suited right now for GPPs, but if you have the salary, like I'm fine if you get him in cash because the rushing floor right now, he's a guy that's running a lot more. He's had a rushing touchdown on the ground in the last 3 games. I just think the floor is high with Kyler as well as the ceiling. So yeah, I still have interest in Kyler Murray. If you can get to him, I think he's a really nice play there at the top. Patrick Mahomes at 8-1. So that game against the Jets was a little bit surprising how it kind of worked out. Until garbage time, they only ran the ball 12 times, playing from a lead the entire game. So, you know what I was worried about was if the Jets obviously couldn't score any points, which they really couldn't, but they kind of hung in there for, it was like 14-9, 21-9. Like the Jets were just like hanging in there, so the Chiefs actually did have to kind of push, put the foot on the gas pedal, and they just completely abandoned the run. So, the Chiefs stack worked out. Obviously that's always in play for GPPs. He had Mahomes 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. And kind of laid out my worries, but yeah, they just completely abandoned the running game. The matchup here against Carolina is decent. And once again, I think Mahomes with both Hill and or Kelsey are always in play for GPPs. Russell Wilson at 7.6, so they basically had every running back out for Seattle last game. They relied on DJ Dallas, who actually did have a pretty solid week. I got to him in the late slate, but we didn't get that news until later on in the slate that he was basically the only running back available for Seattle. This is another game that is projected to be a shootout, and Russell Wilson has just been absolutely insane this year. He's been so consistent. These guys getting it done a bit on the ground. Definitely MVP candidate here. So, if you can get to Russell Wilson, I think he's a really nice play at the top as well. Deshaun Watson at 7-1 against the Jags. This is a really good matchup. My concern here with Deshaun Watson is the Jags, they have no Minshew, so they're going to be playing with a backup quarterback. And, the reason why I always like this Texans offense is they're always playing from behind. But this is a game I could see them playing from ahead in, and maybe they do slow it down a bit. So that is a slight concern, right? I think they probably are going to be playing from a lead in this one. But yeah, Watson has, the last 4 games, he's been really, really solid. Over 300 yards in every single game last 4. 23, 29, 35, and 27 fantasy points, and a good matchup. So yeah, Deshaun Watson is another guy. All these guys at the top look pretty good to me. As far as like Mahomes, Kyler, Russell Wilson, Watson, even Josh Allen here at 7K. The matchup is so good here against Seattle. Another game that's projected to be a shootout. He's a guy who can get it done on the ground as well. So I do like Josh Allen here. This price thing is playable in both formats. Honestly, if you can get to any of these top quarterbacks, if you feel comfortable with it, I think you can play them in cash. I do. Like, it's kind of been a year for me to spend up more on quarterback. The spend down quarterbacks are definitely playable, but we saw it last week with Jimmy G, right? He was the chalk cash game quarterback, and how did that work out, right? So I just feel like if you can get to these quarterbacks, I feel a lot safer with the guys at the top, and they're most of them are in really good spots. So we might get some value opening up throughout the week too. So yeah, at the moment for me, like I'm probably looking to spend up a quarterback. I think you can go there in cash games as well. Lamar again, it was a little bit of letdown, but did get a little bit unlucky as far as obviously, he's not going to have 4 turnovers every single game, and did have 2 touchdowns, or basically tackle the 1 and 1 touchdown on the ground called back. The matchup here against the Colts is not great. It's once again a price point thing. The price continues to drop from now. He's under 7K. I once again think Lamar's in play in both formats because of the floor with him in the ground. So, yeah, I like the price here on Lamar. Again, not really the matchup, but it's a price point thing. Herbert at 6'8", kind of, I guess, came back down to earth a little bit there with 23 fantasy points. So this is a good spot here against the Raiders. Keenan Allen's price did come up a bit, but he's still, in my opinion, a little bit too cheap. You can always go Herbert, Keenan Allen stack. So Herbert's in this mid-range thing is a fine option, but for me, I think I like the upside a little bit more. Some of these quarterbacks at the top. Kind of the same thing with this next range, right? Like Stafford, I get it if you want to go him and or Kirk Cousins. In the game Detroit against Minnesota, definitely could be a shootout with 2 bad defenses. But both are kind of run-first teams, and I just feel a little bit more comfortable getting to the guys at the top. I'm probably not going to get to Big Ben, even though it is a really good spot. I just have no confidence in Dallas scoring enough points. A guy I like is James Conner. Obviously, we'll get to him in a sec. Probably not get to Matt Ryan or Tannehill. So, yeah, the mid-range quarterbacks is not amazing for me. Bridgewater at 6K, I get it, right? They're probably going to be playing from behind. Most likely does get Christian McCaffrey back. So, I guess I don't hate the play with Bridgewater. Again, Minshew's out. Not really interested in the backup quarterback there for the Jags, even in a good spot. Other options here for cheaper quarterbacks, like Tua, it didn't look amazing. 12 of 22. Again, it was the defense that really obviously stepped up. Still in a cheap enough price, but I probably can't go there in cash. Foles, the matchup is really good here against Tennessee. I think if you need a punt quarterback, like I think Foles is viable. Has had basically 40 pass attempts the last 4 games. And the matchup again is pretty good. I could see punting with Foles. Again, you're not going to feel amazing about it. Drew Lock too is another punt quarterback I think is in play. Matchup is just so good here against Atlanta. Again, we don't have to worry about weather in this one, obviously in the dome. So yeah, there are a couple punt quarterback plays in my opinion. Foles, Lock, if you want cheap quarterbacks, but I feel more comfortable spending up at quarterback position. Again, a lot of the guys at the top right, like Mahomes, Kyler, Russell Wilson, Deshaun, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. I'm probably looking to get to one of those guys. I think you can go there in cash. Running back situation. So we have some good running back plays in the slate. We'll start with Christian McCaffrey at 8.5K. I assume he's going to be good to go for this one. We'll see. If he does play, maybe there's a chance they do limit him, so that's something to monitor. But if he's full go and he's not going to be limited, I think the price point at 8.5K is a little bit too cheap. The 2 games he was healthy, 28 and 24 fantasy points. So, and this is a game that they're going to be playing from behind. Obviously, he's a great pass-catching back. So, I do like McCaffrey. Just got to monitor the status here, if he's available and if he's going to be limited or not. Now, Dalvin Cook, again, mentioned that I liked him as a pivot off of a guy, Derrick Henry, last week. He just went absolutely insane for 51 fantasy points. The matchup is so good here against Detroit that he is once again in play. But I feel like he's going to be over-owned in this spot against Detroit, just off that last game. So I like Cook. I think he's a really, really solid play, but I think he's going to be super, super chalky. I don't necessarily think he's a must-play, though. Again, we have McCaffrey. We have a couple other cheap running backs, the guys like James Conner, Chase Edmonds that I really like. So those top 4 guys are probably where I'm looking to in cash. Again, we'll talk about a couple of those guys in a sec. But yeah, it's McCaffrey, Cook, Conner, Edmonds. I like all 4 of those guys a good amount. Derrick Henry at 7.9 is just not for me. Just no involvement in the passing game. He's very touchdown dependent. The matchup is not good here against Chicago. I feel more comfortable with McCaffrey and Cook. I feel more comfortable with Conner and Edmonds right below, so I'm just not getting to Henry. Yeah, Robinson's in a good spot, but playing with a backup quarterback, I don't know if I trust this offense. I know it's, again, a really good matchup, and he had over 100 yards last game, 2 touchdowns. It's just, again, I feel more comfortable with the guys above him. I feel more comfortable with the guys below him. One of those guys below him, James Conner at 6'9". Really, really like the spot here for him. He's the bell cow back for Pittsburgh, and this is a spot they should be playing from ahead. Dallas has not been able to stop the run with anyone, so I think James Conner is definitely one of the safer plays at running back at this price. Obviously, can get it done a little bit through the air as well, so really, really like James Conner there at that price. Definitely one of my favorite plays for running back. I also love Chase Edmonds. This is assuming that Drake is out. If Drake is out, Edmonds in his limited work has been super explosive, and if he's going to be a guy that gets the majority of the touches here for Arizona, we've seen how dynamic this offense is, and we've seen how good of a pass catcher Edmonds is. I really, really like him this price. So again, if Drake, I think there's still an outside chance Drake might play. If he does play, then I'm probably not on Edmonds. If Drake misses, I think Edmonds is a really, really nice play here at this price point. Obviously playable in both formats. So yeah, at the moment, for me, at running back, it's McCaffrey, it's Cook, it's Connor, it's Edmonds. I think those are the cash game plays. Obviously, you can go to them in GPPs as well. Davis, only consider him if McCaffrey's out. If McCaffrey's in, I have no interest in him at that price. I'm not getting to Zeke against Pittsburgh. We'll talk about the Seattle running back situation, but right now it's a lot of kind of stuff up in the air. So this will be something more in the final look as well, the live stream. But yeah, we have Carson, Hyde, Dallas. There's a ton of guys' status up in the air. So that's something to monitor. If all the guys are out once again, I think you can look to DJ Dallas at 5K, but that's a situation we'll monitor later on in the week. Jacobs at 6'3". I talked about him as an interesting pivot because, I knew Hunt was going to be really popular. It was actually Jacobs that did outperform him. Didn't have a touchdown, but had over 100 yards to the ground, 31 carries too. And that game was just super ugly. It was just a bunch of just running plays for 3 yards a carry. Just an ugly game in general. This matchup here against the Chargers is solid. I think he's a fine play at this price. I'm not going to go out of my way to play Josh Jacobs. It's a guess about how you think the game flows in this one. If you think the Raiders are playing from ahead, Jacobs does look good. We saw what happened when they were playing from ahead against Cleveland. 31 touches. Well, if they fall behind, kind of gets phased out, right? Only 10 carries. So it's kind of about how you think the game flows with Josh Jacobs. I'm not going to get to Gurley at 6'2". I'm not touching the Kansas City running backs with Edwards-Helaire or Le'Veon Bell. Jonathan Taylor, I know some people played him. He was a complete bust. They actually went to Wilkins more. Hines looked good through the air. So his status is still up in the air too at the moment. So that's something to monitor. Myles Gaskin, mentioned him as a cheap play. He was decent last week, went for 14 fantasy points. He's just a guy that is playing, majority of the running back snaps here for Miami. He's a good passing back. The matchup is decent here against Arizona. So I once again think Myles Gaskin is a fine play at below 6K if you need, salary relief. Gibson at 5'8" against the Giants did have over 100 yards, 20 carries. So, that was good to see because, basically the season, he just hasn't been getting the touches. But he did have 20 carries the last game. So this is a game I think that could be playing from ahead. Gibson is viable, but, the price point is, I wish it was a little bit cheaper. Montgomery, kind of the same thing. He's going to play majority of the game. I had 21 carries last game. It's a good spot. He's still... just basically the only running back there for the Bears. So I think he's a viable play as well at this price range of 5'7". So yeah, there's a couple interesting plays here below 6K, right? Gaskin, Gibson, Montgomery, I think are all viable. David Johnson at 5'6" is in play too. I think this is a game that the Texans all play from ahead. So maybe they rely on the ground game a little bit more. Maybe we get 20 plus touches from Johnson here in a good spot. I think he's another guy that is in play below 6K. The Denver running back situation with Gordon, Lindsey, I know it's a good spot, but I'm probably not going to get to them. With Moss and Singletary for the Bills, Moss actually got 14 carries for 81 yards, 2 touchdowns. Singletary, he's at 4.7. He had 14 carries as well. So again, it's going to be like a 50-50 split here for these guys. They're more suited for GPPs, guys in timeshares. There's actually a good amount of them, right? Like Swift. It's a good spot, but there's still 2 other backs competing there. Baltimore, kind of the same thing. If Ingram's out, Dobbins and Edwards are viable. They both had pretty nice games, but probably wouldn't go there for a cash game setting. Drake, I think there's an outside chance he could play in this one. If he does, I'm off Edmonds, so that's something to monitor. Wayne Gallman, they play tonight, the Giants do. I'm interested to see what the workload is. He played well when Freeman went down, so if he is a guy that kind of gets like a bell cow workload, then he would look pretty good for value. But again, I want to see what the workload is for him tonight against Tampa Bay in a tougher spot. Again, the other running backs here for the Colts with Hines and Wilkins, potential value plays if Taylor does miss some time. And Wilkins did have 20 carries last week. It's not really the best spot against Baltimore, but is potential value, something to monitor throughout the week. All right, let's move on to wide receiver. So at the top, a lot of guys in really good spots. Like Hopkins at 8.2, he's just, again, a target machine. Always like pairing with Kyler Murray. Love the upside there. Did that last week or 2 weeks ago in Seattle. It paid off in a big way. I think once again, he's in play for GPPs. Metcalf versus Lockett. It seems like they're just taking turns with the big games. Metcalf went insane last game for 43 fantasy points. It was Lockett that went for over 50 last game. So does that mean it's a Lockett game this week? Either way, we have Lockett at 6.8, Metcalf at 7.8. For me, I'll take the discount on Lockett. But both are viable here in this game. Definitely it has potential for a shootout. Diggs on the opposite side has been so consistent, getting a ton of targets. And again, the matchup, you can't get a better matchup really against Seattle. So like all the receivers in this game, Seattle, Buffalo, Diggs, Lockett, DK Metcalf. Ridley's status is currently up in the air right now, so this is something to monitor. If he does miss, I think Julio does get a slight booster at 7.2. And when Ridley went down, he had 7 catches and 10 targets for over 100 yards. So that's something to monitor with the stats of Calvin Ridley. Once again, I think Keenan Allen is still a little bit too cheap. It's just double-digit targets every single week for him. A great matchup. I think he's a nice play. Even at this price, it's getting close to about right. I think he's about a 7.5K receiver. So I still think he's a little bit underpriced. I have interest in Allen once again. Tyreek Hill at 7.1. Just suited for GPPs. Did have 2 touchdowns, but only 6 targets. Him, Kelsey, Mahomes, they're always in play for GPPs. You're just going to have to pay a premium for those guys. This next range of guys, there's still some interesting plays. Like Robinson in a good spot there against Tennessee. So, yeah, you're kind of like a lot of the top wide receivers in really good spots, kind of same thing with the top quarterbacks. So that's where I'm looking to. There is, some value. I think there will be some more value that potentially opens up throughout the week too that, makes it more viable to get these guys the top into your lineups. Fuller, again, kind of laid out my one concern with Watson is I think this is a game Houston is playing from ahead. So there's slight concern there, but, we've seen basically Watson and all the pass catchers being paid off last few weeks. Galladay is currently doubtful. We'll talk about some potential there for Detroit. Other options, the Pittsburgh receivers with Juju, Claypool, Deontay Johnson, I think are all, let's go to Pittsburgh, all viable here in a really, really good spot against Dallas. For me, it would be Deontay Johnson, even though he did have a bust week, his first, healthy bust week, I guess, where he did only 1 catch on 3 targets. The previous weeks where he was healthy, he was put up huge weeks, and he's still the cheapest of the bunch. Give me Johnson, but I think all 3 are viable on the slate. Again, in a really, really good spot. Other options, so now we get below, in this next mid-range of wide receivers. I'm not overly excited about a lot of these guys. So kind of scroll through. Marvin Jones Jr. with Galladay doubtful, I think does make for a pretty nice play here at 5.1. Again, the matchup is so good here against Minnesota, and with no Galladay, he's a guy that's probably going to get targeted even more. We'll talk about a couple of value plays. Marvin Jones Jr. is definitely someone in the mid-range I have some interest in. The Dallas, I'm not going to any of the Dallas receivers. I'm not going to anyone in Dallas right now. Their offense is just a mess. Watkins' status is currently up in the air. If he misses again, we can look to Hardman. We can look to Robinson for value plays. John Brown here at 4.6 has been disappointing since coming back. Against Kansas City, he had a donut. Against New England, he had 1 catch. Sure, you're getting him at a pretty cheap price point, but I don't know if I can trust it. I think more suited for GPPs right now. Just, again, not really getting the targets. It is definitely worrisome. Samuel at 4.4. The concern here is most likely we have Christian McCaffrey coming back, and Samuel's a guy who's obviously getting some carries. Maybe he still does get a carry or 2. Did have 2 touchdowns last week. We're probably not going to get that again, but I still think he's at a cheap enough price point in a game the Panthers are probably playing from behind that you can look to him for a value option. Chenault with the back quarterback, I know it's a good spot, but I don't know if I trust the back quarterback there for the Jags. Other options here for cheaper wide receivers. I know Gallup had a good week, but I don't trust anyone in Dallas right now. Marvin Hall is one of those value plays I think is viable here. When Galladay went down, he kind of stepped up, had 7 targets, 4 catches, over 100 yards. Does have that big play upside. We'll kind of see how I guess Detroit wants to play it. They still have some other guys here, obviously with Marvin Jones, Amendola. I think Hall is someone you at least can consider this week for value. Golden Tate, if he doesn't get traded, I don't hate the idea of punting with him at 3.7. I know back-to-back not so good weeks, but Playing out of the slot, he's a guy that, probably gets at least, 2 or 3 catches at least. And at that price point, and doesn't need a whole lot to get you there. Hamler, if Tim Patrick is out, I think you can look to for value. Had 3 catches, only 3 targets, but did have a touchdown. Again, the matchup is really good here against Atlanta. So Hamler is someone I think you can look to if Tim Patrick is once again out. Again, mentioned Robinson. If Watkins is out at 3-2, he's a guy that is still playing. Played 67% of the snaps. So yeah, I think he's someone that you can look to for value if Samuel Watkins is once again out. And that about wraps up for wide receiver for me. So let's finish it up with tight end again. We'll talk about defense more in the final look as well as in the live stream. Tight end situation again. Hill, Kelsey, Mahomes, in play every single slate. Don't really need to talk about it. They're always in play. Darren Waller at 5'8". Again, I got off of him once we got the news of the terrible wind. Him, I still think he's a little bit underpriced here. The matchup was fair against the Chargers. So, yeah, I think Waller is still viable here at this price. I think he's still a little bit too cheap in my opinion. Hawkinson with no Galladay does become a little bit more viable. Did have 10 targets last week too, which is really good to see. So, and it's a really good spot against Minnesota. I think Hawkinson actually is in play now with no Galladay at that price point. I think Noah Fant's a fine play at 4-6. A lot of these Denver guys are cheap. It's, again, an amazing spot. The targets have been there from 10, 6, 7, and 9. So, yeah, Fant's a viable, cheaper option as well. Ebron at 4 or 5, sure, I'm good with it. I'm fine with anyone against Dallas, really. But how much Pittsburgh exposure do you want, right? Because I feel pretty good about Connor. There's some wide receivers that are all in play. But, yeah, Ebron is viable, too, here. Targets have been pretty safe for him, and Dallas has just not been able to stop anyone. Evan Ingram at 4-3. I just think that's a little bit too cheap. He's been a little bit up and down, but I like the price point. The matchup is not amazing, but it's just a price point thing here with Ingram. So I think he is viable. Hurst, too, at 4-1. I think that's a little bit too cheap, especially we have no Ridley. I think maybe a few more targets go his way. Back-to-back games of 7 targets, 68 and 54 yards through the air. He's been pretty consistent. So, yeah, 4-1. I think that is, a little bit underpriced. I'm fine with Hurst there in the mid-range as well. Henry at 4K has, he's been okay. The price is fair enough, and I think once again, Keenan Allen will be somewhat popular this week. If you want to get off I think somewhat chalky Allen, you can always look to Henry as a pivot for a lot cheaper. Logan Thomas, last few slates he's been on, I've actually played him. Punt tight end, it's worked out for me. Now, he has only had 4 targets in those weeks, but a touchdown in both of those. 3.7K. The matchup is decent here against the Giants. I think he's a viable punt option as well for tight end. And I'm not getting to anyone on Dallas. All 3 Colts tight ends are in play here with Burton, Allie Cox, and Jack Doyle. The issue is, which one is going to get the majority of the work. All 3, I think, actually paid off. Or Mo Alley Cox had 3 catches. Burton had 3 or 4 catches and a touchdown, and Doyle had 2 catches and a touchdown. So that's the tricky part. They are going to utilize all 3 tight ends. I don't even know how to pronounce his name, but I guess only have 1 catch and 1 target. With Font playing, probably can't look there. Yeah, so punt tight ends, nothing really standing out at the moment for me, but possibly, Irv Smith. Again, it's all about how you think the game flows because Minnesota is clearly a run-first team. But if they do fall behind here against Detroit, then the pass catchers look a little bit better here for Minnesota, obviously with Thielen, Smith. So, again, all about how you think that game does kind of flow. But yeah, that really wraps up for tight end. And again, we'll talk about defense more in the final look video as well as in the live stream. So I think that's going to do it for the video today, guys. If you have been enjoying the content so far, I'd really appreciate it if you leave a like button on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you know when I upload videos and know when I go live. Again, I'll be live streaming 1 hour before lock on my YouTube channel, going over everything, answering any questions you guys have. So always make sure to check the live stream Sunday morning. Thanks again. I hope you guys have a good day, and I will see you guys all later.